Hey everyone, Dank's Dad here, and instead of basic training, I'm coming at you guys with a deck overview this week. So, last weekend was the St. Louis Regional for North America, and I was fortunate enough to secure a top four finish. I was one of the strongest players bringing out King Ghidorah over the weekend, and working with my locals in Couple, Go Ohio. We were able to get this deck together, and I think it performed awesome for me. So, to start about Ghidorah himself, he doesn't give any stats on the card, and he only has 10 health. But there is a whole paragraph of static text there, and much like a Yu Gi Oh card, the more that is written on it, the more compelling it can be. So, King Ghidorah essentially has 3 lives, so one for each head. And this was really good into a meta where characters like Amajiki, Byakko, and Rodan are threatening to hit you with one massive attack that you can't block. King Ghidorah just has 2 built in, no thank yous, I'm going to stay alive and keep the game going. And effectively, depending on how well you can manipulate stats, his health total can vary between 30 at the low side and like 50 on the high side. So Ghidorah is just incredible at playing lights out defense. And his enhance ability helps that as well. Says commit, remove 1 card from your hand, choose 1 attack or foundation in your discard pile and remove it. You may try to play that card this turn. So this works on offense, but it also works on defense too. So if you need to grab that block that's just right for the situation, you can. So seeing all of this, you might wonder, where are the stats? Rodan, with his ability, can give a ton of speed. Byakko is giving damage. Amajiki's giving a bunch of damage. What is Ghidorah doing? So Ghidorah actually is supported by other cards that play off of his 10 max health. So pretty much all of Hiei's kit from Yu Yu Hakusho The Dark Tournament, just as an example, lets Ghidorah manipulate stats through the whole game in a way that most other characters only can do when they're on their last legs. Ghidorah also has access to some cards from the Kurogiri kit, like Dissolving the Conflict, but in this version of the deck, we decided not to play those and just to focus on stats and extending the game. So, given all of that, let's take a look at the card choices. So Surviving the Final and Quick to Act were the go-to zeros on Evil for me. I think that looking back at this, Quick to Act probably would have been better served as Master's Pride for the Deadlock, but all in all, I have no real complaints. The low block was very useful. Getting to put a little more speed on my attacks let me close out games in the more aggressive matchups. And being able to manipulate Ghidorah's health means that Quick to Act is on more often than not. Fruits of Our Labor was excellent for me as a one-of. Being able to send combined Pyre Powers back to the discard is pretty nice, and having a deadlock form when your opponent is forced to go there is also pretty cool. Polite and Well Spoken at 4 of is not a card that we have seen much in competitive universes, but I think that given the shell Evil has right now, it's very good. So alongside this card, Galactic Monster and Incompatible Quirks and Combined Firepower form a really, really wild defensive package for Evil. 7 seems like the right number, but you may only even need 6. But just these rebuildable foundations make it so that Ghidorah essentially is an 8-hander once you reach the later stages of the game. You're almost always going to have as many of these foundations as you need to rebuild, and taking advantage of the tempo that Incompatible Quirks gives you, letting you just essentially have an extra foundation every time you play an attack or your opponent does. And removing foundations is a much lower cost when you can, at the end of the turn, just build them back. Another thing that this shell can do is let you skirt around deadlock in a really effective way. So if your opponent has, their stage up and you're sitting on 10 foundations, a lot of the time you're going to have to build into deadlock if you are short on attacks. With this, though, you can just kind of build out If your opponent doesn't have immediate deadlock, you can use this enhance to remove, even if all of your foundations are ready, which is a pretty nifty trick that you can get away with. You also can play one attack, remove a foundation with this, play your whole string, and then hold back more attacks or foundations in your hand, and just build back with the resources that you use to keep the rest of your defense ready. I think that Incompatible Quirks probably has an argument for being the best foundation in the game right now. And I am doing everything I can to make sure that it's the most poorly kept secret in universes right now. And I hope that it gets looked at for ban and errata come the August changes. Relaxed Demeanor is here as a flex slot. Ghidorah's enhance to grab an attack is very powerful. And there are lots of attacks that you're going to want to grab in certain situations. We'll talk about each of them individually, but just having one of these in the main board, then one of these in the sideboard for when a specific answer is needed is really helpful for ensuring consistency and making sure that Ghidorah has access to the right tools. Adaptable Anatomy is just a little bit of throw hate. In my testing, this card came up quite a bit and was very nice just to buy me that extra time I needed against certain decks like Byakko and Younger Toguro. This certainly got me an extra turn or two in my set with Christos Panos in round 2. And even though I didn't win that game, I have no regrets including this card in the deck. If I did not have it, I had no chance. So Unmatched Quickness is one of those cards that I had mentioned from Hiei's kit that is just broken on King Ghidorah. So if you have 10 or less health, this attack is +1 or -1 speed. Not much to say here. Free speed either way is awesome. And, well, it seems like something that might be too strong. Since Ghidorah doesn't give their own stats properly, I think Unmatched Quickness kind of is the compensation for that. So it's a little less consistent. You don't have it starting on your board, but if you are able to build this in naturally from your hand or using Ghidorah's Enhance, once you reach critical mass of them, boy, Unmatched Quickness is a tough card to beat. Incubating does the same thing on defense and enables combined firepower. Card good, play 4 of it on symbol, move on. Mastermind's Apprentice, I think, was actually pretty reasonable in the deck. I liked having this as a one-of, just as another way to remove my foundations, aside from Incompatible Quirks, and forcing your opponent to check can actually be pretty relevant. More of my games than I would have expected went to decking, and making your opponent check a couple extra 6s can force them to just cycle a little bit sooner, even if they are passing those checks and not taking penalties. Citywide Crisis, incredible reset, removes to enable combined firepower, and it can tax your opponent's defense a little bit if they're drawing. So just a great card, another one that I think is just automatic at one of, and I might have considered playing 2 of these. Talked everything about quirks. Fighting for control at 3 felt really nice in the aggressive matchups. I did not get to play too many of those, but it was very, very crucial for me against Justin Birch's Air Rodan in round 8. And in a lot of playtesting with my teammates, fighting for control was a big, big piece of the Endeavor matchup. So if you are expecting to fight faster decks, fighting for control is one of the best cards you can have. And if in those slower matchups, it's the first thing you can take out of the sideboard. Galactic Monster, the ability is nice, but really this is just for that removal package we discussed earlier. And Relentless Challenger is the other side of the Unmatched Quickness coin. Instead of doing speed, it does damage, and boy does it do it well. Not to mention, it's a good block zone, it has Deflect 2, it checks a 6. Challenger is great. And if you watch my set against Ben Limbright in the semifinals, you would see that Relentless Challenger can just dominate the game. Ben was able to get 4 of these on the board at once in our game 2, and I was not able to overcome it, even with 2 on my own. So just 6 free, give a damage, take away a damage, going back and forth is pretty nutty in the mirror. But when you're not playing the mirror and they don't have this, this card can shut down characters like Pony or Rodan that are trying to go wide. Without a Vision was unbelievable for me, and I think that my biggest mistake was not running more copies of this. The Deadlock Enhanced to make your rival's next check get -1 is phenomenal, and playing this did not feel like it had as high opportunity cost as I anticipated. I would probably have cut the next card I'm going to discuss for another one of these. Condescending Explanation was alright. It was a solid performer in the deck, but I think that Without a Vision did it a little better. And the defense from this was tougher to enable than you would think. This deck doesn't do a great job of getting momentum, and maybe if I had included more throws or way to snap momentum, I could have considered this more. So, as for the attack package, Vile Seizing is the bread and butter. 1 high block, Breaker 1, makes your opponent check an extra card, can draw a card, and has good deadlock. Not much else to say, we run 4. Chronostasis trigger, primarily here for Breaker 2 and to freeze problem foundations. It also can represent a threat in the mirror, and if you once again watch my set with Ben, you'll see that in game 1 I was able to use trigger to force some awkward plays out of him. So I think that this is a card that is pretty valuable, but this is not meant to be King Ghidorah tech. This is just Breaker 2 on a mid. Sword of the Darkness Flame. This is card draw. This is great. It's always on. So it's a 4 mid for 5 that gains you 1, stuns 1, and draws 1. Cool. And it has a good block zone. Tri-Gravity Beam, I think it's a card that I would have run more of. I thought that the meta was going to be a lot faster than what I actually ran into. And I think that having this card at 2 or even 3x would have made a lot of sense. Being able to rip cards out of hand is quite good. And in the slower matchup, I think I overestimated the impact of ripping a card to allow this to hit, when in reality, going into Sculptors and taking away what they need to have their one turn to break Ghidorah is massive. So I would say that this is a 3x card. And the card to cut would be Tetra Terror Onslaught. So this card, once again, was very good in my testing in aggro matchups. This is the card that lets you kill Toga, that lets you maybe finish off Endeavor if he tries to commit and kill you. And it's solid. I think, though, that it was my worst attack on the day, and I would probably relegate this to the sideboard. Villainous Teamwork, amazing card. Being able to clear off assets is quite nice, and also being able to ignore progressive is something that is a bit less well known about the card. And sometimes you can either catch an opponent off guard or just, attack them where they can't defend. If you can just play this attack on a 5 instead of playing it on a 9, you just win the game sometimes. And this is one that I think at 2 of in the main board is definitely correct, especially for dealing with Mimic. Blue Flame Torment, also pretty cool. As it turned out, this was another one of my weaker cards, and I think this attack is sort of cuttable. Not sure what I would put in place of it. Maybe it's another Tri-Gravity Beam. Maybe I am running a throw here instead. It could be something like a Berserker Bite, but all in all, the card's solid string starter. Making your opponent check twice, possibly commit out, is pretty cool. And this can set up a true 100% Unleashed fairly consistently. So while I said it was an underperformer, it certainly doesn't do nothing. It's a very solid attack. 80% Power is a pet card of mine, and I think that at this tournament, it really showed up big. I was able to get some of my couple teammates on the train as well, and you'll see this card appear more than once on stream throughout the day. The text of selectively destroying a foundation is just great. I know for me, popping off and getting rid of incredible displays, incubatings, all these other problem cards was so nice. And then it's got big stats, it says breaker, and it makes them build to, which can force your rival to deadlock. And as you can see, the deadlock in this deck is pretty nice, and 80% power lets you just get those Vile Seasons going. And true 100% Unleashed, this guy is the heart and soul. Just keyword big on offense. This is so many more stats than most opponents can handle. And on defense, it is an omni block mid. One thing that is good to note about this is that you can just use this to block regularly if you can pass the check. So sometimes if I'm making a tough check, I will be sure to think and actually look at my check before I reflexively remove this. Since if I'm able to preserve this in my discard pile for a Ghidorah later in the game, that can pretty much shut down one of my opponent's bigger turns. It also is good to know that getting this in your discard in some matchups is better than having it in hand, since you can play around cards like Tri-Gravity Beam, or maybe discard from a character like Bakugo 4 that might try to punish you for holding onto this. You can just hold anything else and fetch this whenever you need it with Ghidorah's Enhance. Dr. Ichigaki negates anything. Excellent card. I think I would have run 2 if I could do it again. I probably would have cut something else in the suite of actions, but this card was rock solid and really is a headache. Airy at 1 of felt right. I think that getting momentum was tough for me, and if I were to change the Blue Flame Torment or Tetra Terrors for throws, I think that maybe moving up to Airy at 2 could be pretty good. This also is a card that plays poorly into Incredible Display, so Chaos Amajiki can make you look foolish for having too many of these. Hacker Extraordinaire can flip it, and with Order being everywhere, I wasn't super keen on having too many. And also having cooked up all Rodan and having seen others who cooked up all Rodan, I feel good about limiting my assets and keeping this 1-1. Combined Firepower, you block everything, you load up your graveyard, get the discard pile when you mill this early. Stupid card, I also hope this gets banned in errata. Barrier Shield, good old scam defense. Breaker, reducing speed, can be a headache combined with Ghidorah's Heads. Fierce Wings, this is pretty nifty, can let you fetch Barrier Shield, can let you build a non-unique foundation that is really powerful, like Unmatched Quickness or Relentless Challenger if your opponent plays Stun. And also, importantly, you don't have to do that. The best play pattern I found with this was using it to grab incompatible quirks on my opponent's turn while preserving King Ghidorah's Enhance to find a block that I needed or something else that was a bit more pressing. It's really strong in that way, and it also is a surprise combined firepower enabler. So if you're missing incubatings and your opponent has a mid attack that they're gassing because they don't think you can combine firepower it, you can say, aha, Fierce Wings, combined firepower is on, and can be a nice little hand trap. But this card at 2 felt perfect, and I don't think it would be cuttable. Sideboard here mostly was about having a little bit of momentum hate with House of Cards, a little bit of aggro hate with Runaway, momentum hate here with Maneuvering, Risho's Meteor to try and shut down stages built around certain cards. This is something I would bring in against most Void decks. And Decay Awakened, the big boy. This is to try and shut down the 5-handers like Woman that are going to punish you or try to punish you by building aggressively the first 2 turns and then taking down your heads. Decay Awakened says, nah, start over. And getting rid of their stage while you have an effective 8 cards or 9 cards in hand because of Galactic Monster and Polite and Well-Spoken is a huge game winner. And while I wasn't confident enough to mainboard this card, out of the side, it's very, very difficult to beat and play around. especially if you are up one game and putting your opponent on the clock. Last was Blue Flame Immolation. Before the event, I actually made a last minute change and swapped this card out for a Psi specialist, I believe. It is the attack that can zero out a weapon or tech. But this is truly the last slot in the deck. I had it here to play into Recovery Girl, and, well, there were no Recovery Girls, and I cut a lot of the incidental support that would have helped this out. So, like I said, this probably becomes Tetra Terror. Now, as for matchups, I think that this deck particularly excels against five-handers and other characters that kind of are lacking for defense. I think that it is also very, very strong into Void Deadlock decks, and while I did not win my semifinal match, I do think that that matchup tends to be favorable. And had we encountered each other in the first rounds of Swiss, I would have won on timer rules. And I think that that one came more down to the tournament than format than anything else. Ben played great, though, no question about it. And certainly someone's got to win, and he more than earned it. But, like, that's an uphill fight for him, and I liked my odds with this deck there. Where I lose, though, are against those characters that can go fast and play around all of the deadlock and hacks. Like, I think that Endeavor and Bionic Menace are pretty even into this, maybe slightly unfavored, but decks that are throwing, if they can get consistent numbers on them, they're very strong. The Younger Tagura list that Christos Panos had on Death, I think would be a matchup that I don't win more often than not, and I was very fortunate to get out of it with a draw. But Luna Tijeras loaded up with a Jawjammer, and suddenly looks like Ghidorah is not going to have an easy time. So if this character is giving you trouble, make sure you play some Death, pack some throws, bring your own Deadlock, and force him to play your game. All in all, though, deck is a little bit tough to play and wrap your head around. Might take a couple matches to figure out, but once you get it going, it's awesome. And cannot recommend it enough if you're looking to win. If you're looking to make friends, though, leave it at home. Thanks for watching, and till next time, have a great day, everybody. Peace.